Yeah. I'm going to start the learning sponsors.
It's destined to have blood on your hands. So whether you're a shochet or a surgeon or a murderer, it's up to you. Yeah. So that they're predisposed.
Okay. Learning sponsors, a year of learning, Friends of Malaskatsky, Moshe Zelig Ben Mordechai. Martin Lippman and family in memory of his wife, Malka Chana Bat Pinchas. Friends of Herb Jeremiah Tzvi Ben Zev. Friends of Sam Coleman, Shmuel Ben Yaakov. Friends of Gideon Lazinski, Mordechai Shlomo Ben Meir. Bella and David Adler in memory of her father, Eliyahu Ben Yosef Kohen. Those who were inspired by our Rebbetzin Emerita, Sheila Shapiro, Sarah Esther Malka Bat Meshulam Yisachar. Gail and Leslie Kaplan in memory of their parents, Mushka Sprinzer Bat Yosef Chaim Bechava, Hanan Ben Moshe Eliezer Bechana, Pesha Bat Shmuel Yitzchak Halevi Vitzipora, Isra Ben Yoel Moshe Cohen Bechana. Rexford Friends of Gladys Sherman, Gutta Bat Meir. Michael Klein and Friends of Judah Klein, Yehuda Tzvi Ben Chaim. Marsha Brana in memory of her husband, Rav Yerachmiel Ben Shmuel. A Month of Learning by Charlie Gelfenstein in memory of his mother, Dacia Gidl Bat Meir Halevi. Also by Charlie Gelfenstein in memory of his father, Meir Ben Yaakov. Ruvain and Susan Podolsky in memory of his mother, Frela Bat Shraga Feivel. A Week of Learning by Marsha Federbush in memory of her father, Menachem Mendel Ben Shlomo, as well as the Friends of Bernie Krutz on the occasion of his second bar mitzvah, which actually was his first. Okay. Also today being the 21st, we have a Day of Learning by Judy and Ari Cohen, in memory of their friend Gloria Greenfeld, and by, at that time, it was Leila and Siggy Bessler, now Leila Bessler, in memory of her father, Mordechai Ben Yisrael Yitzchak. And Hashem was having Aliyah, Crank Rafia Velti, Yeshua Hashem Tzliah, and Lachol B'nai Yisrael B'Keben Shtia.
Oh man. Okay, so we continue really with quite a number of theories about Chetzin Ezek Tzuros, about these half damages. You notice that despite the fact that Chetzin Ezek Tzuros, the half damages of stones that shoot up, despite the fact that I call it a black box or halacha l'rosh Sinai not connected to a particular pasuk, etc., but you see the Gemara is not afraid to analyze it and to weigh various possibilities in terms of its halacha. Very, very important, very, very important point. Okay, now, we left off, I'm sure I remember, at the bottom of Yud Ches Toshma. We're still coming to try and prove, we're trying to prove the idea, whether the idea of Chetzin Ezek Shoros, since in one respect it looks like, as far as the payment is concerned, it looks like Karen, like damage by goring, maybe it can be worn 3 times and eventually have to pay what? Full damages. So the Gemara says Toshma. We're right at the bottom. I'll tell you exactly 1, 2, 3, 4 lines from the bottom, 2 words before the end of the line. Toshma. Come on, bring your proof. The Tani Rami Bar Chesko, we learn the following in a brisa. Tani Gol Shol Hoyshi Roshel Avir Klizuchuchis. A chicken stuck its head into the airspace of a glass utensil. We're talking about, and it made a loud noise, Mishwara, and it broke the glass. Mishan, there's a shalom, he has to pay full damages. Oh, you'll see. Amar Yosef, okay, Amar Rav. So simply, it looks like it holds that it's a normal damage. You pay full damages. Rav Yosef said what? That's what it looks like. If it said the name of Rav, now it's interesting. Why is Rav? Rav's about to argue with the Bryce, but we have a rule called it says Rav Tanahu Pali. Rav, even though we see him as the beginning of the Moraim, but he was really what? He was really right. He really had the stature of a Tana. He was still able to disagree. So he's
a human being.
Yeah.
Started to sing a high soprano and
right.
Would they be responsible?
We're gonna have to discuss it. But I want you to know something, and you're gonna. I promise you, I'm not making this up. My brother, who you'll meet one day, is a very interesting individual and can be frightening at times. And one time he had a very great confrontation with my mother. May she live and be well. And he began to stare intently at a glass on the table, and it happened right in front of me, and the glass shattered. I saw it happen. I wouldn't tell you something. I saw it happen. I saw him do it.
Did he pay for it?
He was a kid. They didn't charge him. So take a look. We're going to explain here. We're going to say we're going to take a. We have to discuss what it is. We have to discuss what this is. No. Should we? It's simply. It sounds like we should look at this as what as the koach of a person and strength. So it looks like damage done at least by an animal. Where we differentiate between the body and its force. Let's take a look. So yeah, exactly. So it's considered a force. So you see, it looks like what looks like an argument. The Bryce has said what that it's half damages, but part full damages looks like it's bodily damage, or but we're not sure what it is. We're going to see in a second. And Rav says it seems to contradict. Susha tzarach, if a horse neighed, the chama shanor or the donkey brayed, when he broke utensils with his voice, Mishal Chatzinezik pays only half damages. So it comes out. It looks like that by damage by voice, the Bryce holds you pay full damage. As Rav says, you pay half. So the only thing is, we got a problem. It really looks like it's throwers. It really looks like a force of the body. And therefore, it should be, as far as we're concerned, it should always pay half damages, my law. So what is the argument? It must be what? So how can you have an argument about such a thing, assuming that everybody holds like the rabbis? Must be must be that it happened 3 times. The chicken yelled into the glass 3 times. And the horse did it 3 times. And this is the argument. The Bryce holds of our Yeshad, he holds what? That after 3 times you pay full damages. Umar and Rav hold what's over it doesn't, okay, and you have to pay half damages. I don't have to say such a thing. I can say it's happened 1 time. The only thing. So we'll look to the sukkahs or whatever. It's clear it's 1 time, and it's clearly what? It's the rule of throwers, of stones that shoot up. But the only thing is this. Forget what I just said. It's the opinion. It's the normal case, and it's a classical argument of whether we hold that stones pay full damages like sumchos, or stones pay half damages like the rabbis. Okay, but look at the sumchos, so we're going to come in. That's all. That's the argument. The Brisa holds like sumchos that you pay full damages for damage done by the force of the animal, and Rav holds what that you pay like the rabbis that you pay half damage. I give myself 1 second. How can you tell me that? How can you tell me that this is a case of stone shooting up? Stone shooting up, we've always described it as similar to regal, that it's a normal damage. Okay, over here, but over here, this is something strange. Okay, so it should really be akin to what? To goring, and not to stone, and it shouldn't be eligible for full damages. And the answer, if you hold like the rabbis, the answer is no. This baby is running. Don't worry. There's seeds inside of the glass enclosure, and therefore it's normal to go what you're eating, and also by definition makes noise. By Rabashi. Now I have to do tshuva here, because yesterday I tried to simplify everything, but I'll end up making it more complicated today by having made it simple yesterday. We've already mentioned the idea that we have a question of whether we say whether there's warning, when it can graduate. But the question is, what was the case? So I've been learning with you simply because I wanted to simplify. There are really 2 opinions in Rashi. When the question comes up, can stones become worn? There's 2 ways to look at it. One way is the way I've read it to you up until now, which is the second way in Rashi, which is that here stones usually pay half, but maybe the whole idea of half. Maybe I should compare stone to its payment rather than its form of damage. Its form of damage is like regal, like trampling, but its payment is like what? Is like goring. So maybe it should look like its payment, and after 3 times, you have to pay full damages. That's the way I read it up to now. Maybe yes, maybe no. But there's a second way to read it, which is really the first way. It's like this. No, we're only asking about stones when it's similar. It's really different, and it's similar to goring. So, for example, when stones happen in a strange way, like for example, the stones are happens from kicking or something else, whatever it's going to be. Then we have a question. Then we have a question of maybe then after since it's not only similar to goring in its payment, but it's also similar to goring in the format and the way that it does damage. Maybe then it graduates after 3 times to full damages. That's the part that I didn't tell you yesterday. Now you'll see a reason why I'm going to do it now, because I want you to have the full appreciation of what takes place.
So in goring, there's bodily contact. How could you compare bodily contact to something where it's
right? No, so that's a very good point. But remember, that's a good point. So that's been the debate up until now. We're always wondering. Well, since we got like an enigma. We had a handed down tradition that stones pay half damage. Now, but so half damage on the one hand, it's really like but it's regardless of the payment, the form of damage is like rego, like what, like normal. It's not bodily. It's not bodily, but it's like normal. Okay. On the other hand, because it pays half, it looks a little bit like it looks very much like gory. Now I don't know. Remember, the Torah told us. The Torah told us that what that force pays half. Okay. So that's what God told me. So because that really it should be like bodily damage, but it pays half. Or we could argue the other way, however you want to argue about it. But that's what Hashem said. I chose. Hashem says I'm charging you half. Okay, and you're right. So, but once that's there, so we don't know. We still want to use our mind and make the best comparison we can to other laws. So now to bring it up. So now I'm going to bring up a new query, and then keep remembering that I told you two possibilities for the original query. So, boy, Rabashi asked the following question: Yeshinu litzoros l'revia nezek. 1 second. If a person does, if an animal does stone, but in a strange way, okay. For example, when it kicked and stone shot up. So that's not the norm. Kicking is like a malicious act rather than walking. Okay. What's the rule? Do I now give it the rule perhaps of goring, and therefore rather than paying half damages, maybe for the first 3 times you have to pay what? A quarter damages. Okay. So they say that you do it. No, do I say that there's a change? Do I say that when it's strange you pay a quarter, a half of the norm? Okay. Or we don't say it. I'm sorry, I didn't read properly. Do I say it goes to a quarter damage or not? Now the Gemara uses again its classical thing. If you should solve it. Be the Rava because of Rava. The boy Rava number we said Rava's been asking up until now. Okay, is it possible that after 3 times you pay full damages for stones or not? Mechlal, this implies the Ein Shinoi. By definition, if we'll take Rava as the authority, the fact that he could ask that question makes it clear that there is no such thing as paying a quarter damage. Now, the question is why? Okay, so I'm going to give you the 2 possibilities. If we say that the question was when you do something strange, when you do stones in a strange way, after 3 times does it pay full damages? Well, it can't be what Ravashi asked. If Ravashi is asking that when it's strange you pay a quarter, then by definition, since you applied the principle of goring to making it a quarter, after 3 times it can only go up to what? A half by definition. So Rava could have never asked, let it go to whole. That's one way to say it. So it proves that Rava for sure held that there's no quarter. Here's the second one. Even if we say the way I said to you simply, that the question is, here usually you pay half damages, okay? And if an animal did kicked up stones normally, just from walking, they shot out. And Rava is asking if maybe after 3 times it goes to full damages. So the point it goes to full damages. We also say what? That it can't be that you pay a quarter when it does it in a strange way. And what's the reason for that? Okay, because if you say that, when it does it in a strange way, you'll go down to a quarter. So it means what? Okay, so when you do it the normal way, it's by definition it has to be when does it have the nature of goring? When it's a quarter, but when it's a half, it's not the nature of goring. It's the nature of rego. So there's no way for trampling to graduate to full damages. If you looked at the original trampling as a type of goring also because it pays half damages, it can graduate. But since you've told me that when it's strange, you apply the idea of goring to make it a quarter, then you never applied the idea of goring when it was a half. So the half definitely can't graduate to a whole. Okay, you go over it, you listen on your own time, so to speak, and these are the 2 ways. But either way, we say that again, that looking through, and again, I want to show you this beautiful principle. This is very important because it seems what I'm mentioning now seems to contradict things I've told you many times, but it doesn't. Sometimes when I know that an authority has said something, remember, let me just explain what I'm saying so you shouldn't think I'm crazy. No rabbi is the source of a halacha. The source of halacha is the word of God. No rabbi is any stronger than what he proves. I hope I'm clear. You know what I'm saying? Period. The greatest rabbi that ever lived. It's not him that says the halacha. It's when he shows me that that's what God said. That's the authority of every person of Torah. One thing. I'm not talking about the Sanhedrin. Even that's my point. No. So whatever a person says, the person has to show me that's what the Torah said. I'm not talking when they pass on a tradition. Okay, now However, despite that, okay, everybody has to demonstrate what they say. It doesn't matter. The greatest rabbi can be challenged by a 5-year-old. Anybody, if the source doesn't generate the halacha, the greatest person has to renege. This happens many times. Okay, now, so why are we now, on the basis of an authority, obviating a question? So the answer is like this: it's because our masters have analyzed, and we know. Well, look, we'll see from what he did. You know what? I can see for sure that his tradition was the other way, or they knew the other way. That's a different story. That's not him making something up. That they were the authority. They passed the tradition on to us. Saying. So I know that my superior has worked it out. That's a different story. So I have a tradition. So over here, we say sometimes I can look to an earlier rabbi and say, if he was able to ask this question, he for sure thought that the tradition was not this way. That's a different story. Tradition, when you talk about it, I have to trust the rabbis to give us the tradition. Here, nobody would even know what an aleph is. There was a famous Gemara. We had it already. You had it already in Shabbos. There's a famous potential convert came to Hillel. So he wants the Torah, but he wants to explain it without the Torah law. So Hillel teaches him aleph beis gimel, and then the next day he teaches him gimel aleph beis. It's the opposite. He teaches him the opposite. So wait a second. Yesterday he said this was. You mixed me up. Was this an aleph or is that an aleph? What's going on? So Hillel shows him that even to know how to read the letters, you need a tradition. We can't even do it. You can't say the word of the Torah without it. When the rabbis are passing on the traditions, I don't challenge their veracity, but that's a difference between the faithfulness of the rabbis to give over what they had, or when the rabbi is expressing a derivation. Everybody's derivation is subject to attack. Everybody. A tradition, that's a tradition. And that's the expression. We have two expressions like that we say. One is in Kabbalah, Nekabel. If this is a received tradition, we'll receive it. Okay? In Dinu, but if it's a logical derivation, Yesh Hashemah, not argue. Or similarly, or Im Halacha. Again, if this is a tradition, okay, I'm not arguing. But if you are making a logical derivation, everybody has right to argue. Everybody can argue, and that's why I mentioned the other day also. Even when if it's true that if a great rabbi goes to Sanhedrin and disagrees with them, and they all get together and they say no, he's wrong, he has to listen. That's a different story. That's the din of Zaken Mamre. But I told you, for example, let's say the Sanhedrin paskin that something is permissible to eat, and I, as a Jew, a person who learns, I think they're wrong. Now I think they're wrong. So if a Jew who wasn't involved ate what they said was kosher because they told him, and it turns out not to be kosher, it's going to be their sacrifice. But if a person who knows that they're wrong, when they said it's kosher, eats it because they said it was kosher, then he has to bring the sacrifice. He's not allowed. He has to be responsible. If he goes to you see what I'm saying? You don't get to shirk your responsibility. Everybody has to be responsible. So there's a difference when I'm relying on tradition is a different thing than argumentation. That's all I'm trying to make. It's a very important. In Kabbalah, the Kabbalah. If there's tradition, we accept, we receive it. Tradition is tradition. Somebody has to pass. We have to pass down the law. In Dinu, but no, you're making a logical derivation. Hey, I'm in. Let's talk. I'm discussing this with you. See, I'm saying that's a very important point. So over here, we understand at a certain point that I understand that this is the way that it was taught to us. Okay, I said 1 second. Dilma, Rabba, maybe Rabba. Now, other people read this Gemara differently than me, but I'm just reading. Dilma, Rabba. Okay, the guy says no. How do you know that? How do you know that Rabba's query obviates Rav Ashi's query? Dilma, Rabba, in Timtiloma Kamar. Maybe Rav himself was really only saying what he's saying, dealing with the two sides of Rav Ashi. In other words, what? First, we'll ask this question. Can half damage of stones go down to a quarter when it's done in a strange way? Maybe yes, maybe no. In Timtzi Lomar, this is what Rav was saying. But if you'll take the side that we never go down to a quarter, then I have a new question. Then can it go up to a hole? After 3 times, or it doesn't. Now, so say you really assuming that I'd solved Rav Ashi's problem, then Rav is asking his problem. Okay, on one side. And the Gemara says, what? And according to that, Teku, let it stand. We don't have an answer. By Rav Ashi, koach kocho. What about a force from a force? Okay, l'sumchos. According to Sumchos, who said what? Kekocho dame. who said, according to Simchus, who said that stones that fly up pay full damages. What about stones after stones? In other words, if the animal shot stones out, they broke a utensil, and that utensil broke and threw out a shard and broke another utensil. So what about the second one? Do we say what, according to him, that the second one is just like the original force and you pay full damages? Oh, lower, maybe not. Okay, and maybe not. Maybe the second one's going to pay half damages. In other words, now why is that? So the Gemara says, "Mi gomer did maybe Sumchus also got a tradition about half damages." Okay, umuki lo b'kocha, and he would designate that tradition of half damages to what? To the force of the force. Or maybe he never got any handed down tradition of half damages. Now, if you remember, the other day I read to you according to my Ritz Chayetz. Why? In order to explain the Rambam. So now today I have a challenge to continue explaining why. The Rambam tells us that there's never an argument about a halach l'Moshe Sinai. So then how can we have Sumcha saying that Tzroros pays full damages and the rabbis say they pay half? He argues that there's no tradition. So we said, no, they both have a tradition, but his tradition was full damages and their tradition was half damages. But 1 second, then if his tradition was full damage, how can they be asking if he got a tradition? So I would humbly submit to you that according to that, if we can answer according to that, I have to go back to Ritz Chayetz. I haven't looked, but according to Ritz Chayetz, it would come out like this. You have to say that he had a tradition. He had a tradition for whole damage. The question is, did he also have a tradition for half damages, in which he now applies to what? To force of a force or not? Exactly. Okay, and the answer is what? Again, take the we can't answer. A book that I don't think I'm going to write, but when I was a kid, I always wanted to write it. And I'll tell you, yeah, I don't think I'm gonna. But the book I wanted to write as a kid was explaining all the halachas according to the opinion that we don't rule by. It's very hard. Why is it hard? Why? Because you see, since I'm a kid, it upset me mightily. Why? Because since so many things that you don't know about the opinion that we didn't rule like are never explained, because the rabbis lavish all their attention on the opinion that we follow. And therefore, so much about the opinion that we don't follow is never explained. It used to drive me crazy. When I was a kid, I used to drive everybody nuts in the base medrash, and I was begging people to find me sources. But I don't think I'm going to write that.
It's a tradition not to follow the law. Well, it's like when Mashiach comes in Beis Shammai.
Yeah. Who says that? I think it's that Arizal says that. I think the Ari says that. Kabbalah says. Okay. Yeah, I think that's a Kabbalistic truth. I think. I some of it. So now, okay, now back to the ranch. Rabbi said, back to the ranch. Okay, we learned in the Mishnah. I some of it. If the animal kicked up, or alternative, I use choros menati mitachas ragleha. It kicked, or if stone shot up from its feet, and it broke utensils. Okay, but with those you pay half damages. Now we don't know what those two cases are. Is one like the other, or two separate cases? They have this query. Hey, what's the Mishnah saying? It talked about kicking and it talked about stones flying up. It doesn't mean to say what. Let's say it was kicking and it broke utensils by kicking. So obviously that's a case of goring. A case of goring. Oh, but and then it said, or alternatively, if it just walked normally and shot stones up, and everything follows the rabbis. In other words, the first case is where it kicked and broke utensils. That's goring, and you pay half damages. And the second case, for an entirely different reason, is really walking, is really rego, trampling, and it shot stones up and it pays half damages according to the rabbis. Oh no, I could say no. You have to put these things into opposition. Here, Tilma, maybe this is what the Mishnah is saying. Our Mishnah. If the animal was kicking, and by kicking it damaged something, okay, you're gonna pay half damages because of goring. Oh, Troas machmas beer, or also stone shot up because it kicked. Kicking is abnormal. Also in that case, you pay half damage. Why? Because it was goring. But not second. So then when the stone shot up because of abnormal behavior, it's half damages. The inference being what's the inference being what? That's what it is. What's the inference? In that case, but then if it's gonna shoot stones up normally, the inference of our mission is gonna be that normal stone shooting up pays full damages or money, and our mission, who's according to Sumchas, our mission is according to Sumchas. Woo! Who expected such a thing? So how do I look at it? Two separate cases or two similar? Tashmami Sefer says, come on, I can prove your point. If you look at the end of the Mishnah, it's going to be clear. Since the end of the Mishnah says, Dorsal Kliva Sharatu, if it trampled a utensil and broke it, Manafal Shavrak Liacha Ushvaro, and then a shard from the first utensil that it walked on shot up and broke another utensil. Okay, Al Rishon Mishal Nezik Shalom. So the first one has to pay full damages. That's walking. We're seeing the last one, meaning the one that was broken by the shard. Okay, are you going to pay what? Chetzinez, you pay half damages. Why? Because we consider that to be what? To be stones. Now the E Sumchas. And 1 second, if you're telling me our Mishnah is following Sumchas, who holds that what, that you pay full damages on stone, he doesn't hold that when the shard comes up and breaks the keli that it should be full. It should be half damage. It should be full damages. What are you talking about? The chitem, and if you want to tell me what, no, then I can reread it. And you have to that when it said Rishon, the first one it really want Rishon Lataza, not the first one that it stepped on, the first one that was hit by a flying stone. So the first one is the second one. He stepped on the first one. Then the first one that got hit by the flying was the second one. Okay, and the Avasheni, or you like Rashi reads, the Achron is Achron Lataza. The last one, which you thought was the second, is really what, the third. It's the last one to get hit is the third. Okay, and therefore what? So you pay for the first one that got hit. You're going to pay what? Full damages because it's sumchas, and the second one that got hit, you're going to pay half damages. Why? V'shani leila sumchas, because sumchas differentiates being kocho, a difference between a force that you force of the animal you pay full, the kocho to the force of the force where you where you pay half. Okay, so no problem. So therefore, what? Therefore you have no proof. Hello, the boy Ravashi. 1 second. He says 1 second. If that's true, okay, so therefore you have to say I really could say that it's sumchas. 1 second. Hello, the boy Ravashi. 1 second. If you're showing me now, you're reading the Mishnah in such a way that sumchas clearly differentiates between force of an animal, which pays full damages, and force of a force, which pays half. The boy Ravashi, he says, when Ravashi earlier asked the query, the force of the force, according to Sumchas, is it like the first force? Oh, it's not like the first force that pays half. Tifshitle. So then, according to this reading of the Mishnah, Ravashi could solve his problem. The lavka kocho dame. How did Ravashi learn it? You could say what? It's not. It's clearly not, because we can see what he should see clearly what. That it's not, because here the Mishnah is saying, we're saying according to Sumchas, that the first one that got hit by flying stones, a hole. The second one, half. So you see what that the force of the force is not like the force. Okay, the Gemara says no, that doesn't prove it. Avashi karabana mukilo, you're making a mistake. Ravashi never read this Mishnah like Sumchas. He read it like the rabbis, okay, and therefore he explains that the second part explains simply like we thought. The animal stepped on a utensil and it hit, and then a shard from that utensil hit another utensil and broke it. So the first one he's paying full damages because it's regel of walking of trampling, and the second he's paying half damages because it's stones, and therefore he wasn't able to solve his problem according to Chumkas. Now, the only thing is like this. Ravashi, who said our Mishnah is like the rabbis, but he did have an interesting question. What is that? What is the question? This is the question. Okay. We have to. Do we read like this? Do we read the Mishnah? If it was kicking, and it did damage by kicking, or alternatively, or alternatively, it caused stones to fly up normally. In both cases, chatzi nazek, and therefore what? You only pay half damages because it's normal kicking up of stones. Ha machmas biyut, but if stones kicked up by kicking via nezek, maybe they only pay a quarter, like we said before. Why? Because it's a change on stones, and therefore what you pay, therefore it's like a unwarned for that, and it pays a quarter. Shinoi, in which case, now back to the same question, that we say that there is indeed a way to apply Karen to kicked up stones, flying stones, and you pay a quarter. Oh, Dilma, no. You should read the Mishnah this way. If it was kicking and it damaged by kicking, Troros machmas biyut, and the second way, what? That if it caused stones to fly by kicking, that is like a Karen way, chatzi nezek. It's still half damages. And we never say that you go down to a quarter when stones fly up like goring. The answer is what? That was the question. The answer is teku. Let it stand. We don't know the answer. He asked the following query. V'amri lo Rabbi Chia Baba. Somebody asked Rabbi Chia Baba. Now get ready. He asked this question. I saw my leches the makam she'ev sharlo elim keminateses. An animal's walking in a case. It's inevitable. If it walks, stones are going to shoot up. But what happened was, instead of the stones shooting up from normal walking, uvota behiza beizika mao, and what? But it kicked and caused the stones to come up, and they damaged. So now, what should I say? Should I say from kicking it caused it to go up? Well, it caused it to go up. Came the afshala, since it was impossible, or chayuhu. No, should I say what? That since it couldn't possibly have walked without kicking up. So even though it kicked, we still consider it to be normal. Okay, and it's like any other case of stones going up normally. Okay, but I should say no. So I can say no. But since in the actuality of this case, it only it only kicked up by doing an abnormal action, and I don't consider it like walking, and therefore what? On the side that we had an idea that there could be a change when you do an unnatural one, he's going to pay a quarter damage or not. The answer is teku. Let it stand. We don't know the answer. We don't know how to look at it. Okay. Rabbi Yomi asked this query to Rabbi Zera. Even though we've talked about this before, if an animal's walking in the public domain, and I'll leave the other word out, and it caused stones to fly up and they did damage, the simple question, no, what's the law? In other words, does the rule of stones apply in the public domain, unlike trampling, or does it not apply? Mao, what's the law? No, do we have the half payment for stones in the public domain? Why? Because again, do we compare it to the payment or to the form of damage? If we compare the camera dummy, let's compare it to the goring. Why? Because it's the same paying the chayeves, and I'll say therefore it's also obligated in the public domain, just like goring. Oh, Dilma, no, I compare it to what? I compare it to the way it damages. So the regular, it's really compared to in its form of damages, just like trampling. But Batura, just like trampling is exempt in the public domain, also stones going up in the public domain is exempt. Amalei, so Zera said to him, Mistabro told the simple understanding, it makes sense to him, that it seems to make sense that what it's just like trampling, and therefore it's utterly exempt. Just like trampling is exempt in the public domain, also stones are exempt in the public domain. He says, 1 second. He says, I got to ask you a question. Let me ask you another question. Let me ask you a new question. Okay, you told me it's exempt. Let's say the animal's walking and it caused stones to shoot up in the public domain where it's exempt, on stones shooting up. But the stones, instead of hitting something in the public domain, it hit something in the private domain. Mahu, what's the law? Should I look at it that it did the damage in the public domain and it's exempt, or should I look at it that it did the damage in the private domain and it's obligated? No, do I follow the inception or the conclusion? Amar Lei, so he said to him, Akira Einkan. He says, Hanacha Yeshkan. Here, if there's no lifting up of the stones in the private domain, how am I going to consider it legally valid that there was a falling down in the private domain? You have to say what? You have to say that he is not obligated. AC base Rabbi Yuma said, 1 second. How can you tell me that he's not obligated? Didn't we learn? We learned that a Bryce explicitly. If it was walking along the way, okay, and it caused stones to shoot up, and it says, listen to this. He says, how can you say what you're saying? Pardon me. I said, he attacks him now. Whether it's in the private domain or the public domain, he's obligated. My love, he says, isn't the case there? He teaser now. It can't be. We're not supposed to be obligated in the public domain. My love. So what does he have to interpret it? He teaser b'shus rabim v'zik b'shus rabim. Pardon me. No, I'm sorry. Let me back up. No, it's simply. Just read it simply. Isn't it where it kicked it up? It caused it to shoot up in the public domain, and it did damage in the public domain. And you see that you're wrong what you told me before. And what? And that really what? The half damage of stones is obligated in the public domain. He says, low. He says, no, that's not the case. No, it's only where it kicked it up. It's caused it to shoot up in the public domain, but it did damage in the private domain. So I defend what I said to you before. Normal stones in the public domain is exempt. But he says, 1 second. He said, but 1 second. But you precluded that when I asked you a second question. Well, Martha, didn't you tell me? You said, listen, if there's no uprooting in the private domain, then there's no falling down in the private domain, and he's exempt. How can you tell me that the Bryce is talking about where it shot him up in the public domain and did the damage in the private domain? Amalei said, you're right. He says, Hadri B. He says, I renege. I ACV. Now again, now you're going to see a very interesting thing. It's 3 times he says I renege. So it's very strange why the Gemara goes over it. And the answer is simply that he really asked them a slew of questions to make him renege, but he asked them all at once. But the Gemara separates them as if it happened 3 different times, but it didn't happen all in one shot. ACV again, Rabbi Yirmiyah raised this difficulty to Rabbi Zeira. We learned in our Mishnah, if the animal trampled a utensil, and broke it, but nafal hashever al kli acher, and then a shard fell on a second utensil, and broke it, and it broke it. So the first one he pays full damages. Why? Because that's trampling. Okay, and on the latter one, he pays half damages. But Tani Allah, and we learned in a brisa about it. When is it true that he has to pay for both of them, the one he trampled on and the one that got hit? That's only in the domain of the damagee. But in the public domain, what on the first one he is exempt. Why? Because trampling is exempt in the public domain. And the second one, he's obligated. Why? Because just like what? Just like goring in the public domain. My law. Now, when is it obligated? Is it where it shot up the stones in the public domain and it damaged in the public domain and therefore what we have to say that what you told me before is not correct, and really what that the half damage of stones happens even though it looks like trampling. It follows the rule of goring and you pay. Lo, he says in the public domain. Lo, he says no. No, it's where it shot the stone up in the public domain and it damaged in the private domain. So now he asked them. I told you, but we did this all at once. One second, he said, "Didn't you tell me that any time that even if the uprooting of the stone is not in the private domain, we can't say that the coming down is the private domain and he's exempt." He says, "Hadribi." He says, "What? I renege what I said." Okay. Now, 1 second. Let's look a little further. Is it really true that you're exempt on any damages of by the shooting up stones in the public domain? You're exempt. Okay. Did Rabbi Yochanan tell us the idea that half damages? There's no difference when you pay half damages, whether it's in the private domain or in the public domain. You always pay. So it sounds like what? My love, isn't that talking about Rishus Rabim? Isn't where it's shot up in the public domain and it damaged in the public domain, and still Rabbi Yochanan is telling what you're obligated? Okay. Against Rabbi law, you have to say no. He's not speaking about that. He's rather speaking like we keep defending a teaser Rishus Rabim, where it shot the stones up in the public domain, and the damage was done in the private domain. 1 second. So again, Rabbi Yirmiyah says to Rabbi Zeira, "Baal Marta, didn't you tell me? What are you talking about?" He says, it's again. We asked again. We keep. He really America. He asked everything at once, really, but we broke it up. Baal Marta, what are you talking about? He says to Rabbi Zeira, didn't he says, didn't you say Akira Einkan Hanocha Einkan? Didn't you Hanocha Yeshkan? Didn't you tell me that you can't say that that if there's no uprooting of the private domain, you can't say what? Can you say, and meaning what? You can't say that there's a coming down of the private domain. Okay, he says, well, Amarle says to him, Adribi, he says, I renege. When we were kids, we used to read it. He's exasperated by this point. So I already told you, I renege. But the way I read you now, it's not all happening at once. Okay, but there really is an alternative to answer that kasha from Rabbi Yochanan. By saying alternatively, I can really say, Rabbi Yochanan, when Rabbi Yochanan said that there's no difference when it comes to half damages between the private domain and public domain, he was only talking about damage done by goring, but he wasn't talking about the damage done by stones. You also Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya, Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya, this is the grandson of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya of Osha were sitting Akila, the Rabbi Yehuda. They were sitting in the hallway of Rabbi Yehuda. Some people say to Rabbi Yehuda, that's also Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya, his own hallway. Okay, whatever. Okay, Nafek Milsa B'Benaya, and they actually said a halacha like this between them. Okay, in other words, between the two, a discussion, a halacha came out. One of them asks, Kishikakov is Nava. The animal is in public domain, and it swishes its tail and it breaks utensils. Mahu, what's the law? Should I say what that it's a normal type of damage, and therefore it's like trampling, and in a public domain it is not obligated? Or maybe I say what it's abnormal, and even in the public domain it's obligated from the rule of goring. The other one said to him, he said, "What are you talking about? I said, can any guy walk down and hold on to the tail of his animal? It's abnormal. He says, what? He says, how can you can't obligate a person for that. He can't possibly do it. It's completely impossible. And therefore, what? He can't possibly be obligated. He says, 1 second. If that's what you're saying to me, so 1 second, then how can he be obligated for goring in the public domain? He says, how can you obligate a guy for his ox goring? What is he supposed to do? Hold the thing hold it by its horn. Now the next piece is a little difficult. This is the Hachiashta. He says you can't make a comparison. Karen lab urche. And this is ironic. It's counterintuitive. This line. He says Karen lab urche. Goring is not normal. And really, what we're saying, he really should have been exempt on goring. But the Torah says, I want you to watch it anyway. I want you to watch it anyway. Okay, and therefore what? So it's really only a fine, and therefore what? You can't say, oh, he can't walk down holding, because we understood it. We already said that he really shouldn't be obligated. But since the Torah wants him to watch it, even though he can't hold it by the horn, remember, since it's really not going to normally gore, it's really not normal for it to gore. It's abnormal. But the Torah wanted him to watch it, so therefore we can say, listen, come on, the thing doesn't really gore. He doesn't have to walk down the street holding the horn of the animal. You can't say that he can't hold the horn of the animal, because the Torah said, even though it doesn't normally damage, I want you to watch it. Hashem says, that's right. You don't really have to, but I'm making you do it. So of course he has to pay. Oh, but over here, here by regal, it's really something that's normal. And therefore, what? Since it's normal everywhere in the Shus Rabim, we say, listen, once you exempt him from Shus Rabim, he has no obligation to what? To worry about it. So therefore, if swishing the tail is as normal as trampling, you don't have to pay. 1 second. So then, if that's true, if you're really admitting, if they really understand that swishing of the tail is normal, so why did they have the question originally? Why were they asking if it's like goring? They said it's normal, so it's obviously not like goring. The answer is kishkush yisera. They're talking about that hair's breadth when it's more than normal swishing. That's what we're asking. Is more than normal swishing still swishing, or is it still swishing which is walking, which is trampling, and it's exempt, or is more than normal swishing already push it over to what? To the abnormal of what? Of goring. Yeah, exactly. So it's goring. By Ravina, Ravina asked this question. What if the animal with its sex organ, okay, swishes and damages kalim? What's the law? So we say, look, it's a strange thing. So therefore, it's like goring. What it says, Karen Lab law. Here, what happened with why does an animal gore? Because its passion took over. Okay, hachanami here. If it's gonna go swish a thing with its sexual organ, loshon, it's no different. It's obviously it's got a crazy idea in its head. Oh, Dilma, no, maybe not. Karen coming us on Isaac. Remember, it's not just goring is not just different. It's also what? It's also intention. It's malicious. Okay, and kanos here. No, apparently that's animals don't do that. They don't intentionally try to damage a keli that way, and therefore it's really like walking. The answer is teku, let it stand. Now we said in our Mishnah that it's normal for chickens to walk normally and to break things. Okay, and therefore you have to pay. And now it says this. The Mishnah also said, it's not quoted here. That's the hulu, etc. It says here that if anything was attached to the chicken, okay, any kind of a string of this, anything like that, okay, anything is attached to it, okay, and okay, or alternatively, if it's hopping and jumping and it breaks utensils, he has to pay half damages. Now we don't know what's going on. Amar Rav Huna says Lo Shanu. When our Mishnah says that you pay half damages for the thing that's tied on, now the way we're learning now, El Shenikshar Me'elav, it's only when it became tied to the chicken leg on its own, it got tangled on its own. Okay, and that's when you pay the half damages. The half damages. But if a person tied it on and then somebody stumbled on it, etc., chayev, then the person who tied it has to pay full damages. Why? Because what he's made is he's talking. He's made a bar, a stumbling block in the public domain. Where says 1 second. Niksha me'elav man chayev. He said, what are you talking about? If it got tied on by itself. Who has to? What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? Who's paying the half damages? What are you talking? If the person who owned the original string, what's the case? If he hit it, what? And the chicken went in and got it from his house. Anusu, it's completely beyond his control. You can't obligate him. If he didn't hide it, okay, he threw it into the public domain. Hoshehu, then obviously he's delinquent and he has to pay full damages for creating an obstacle, a stumbling block. Okay, Ella. Well, so who's paying half damage? Is Balatani go? Who's paying half damage for the damage done by the string on the chicken leg? It's the owner of the chicken, and not the owner of the string. My shana kuli nezek below. Why is he not paying full damage? It's the ksib, because it says if the damage is done by a stumbling block. Okay. The ksib each bor. Since we learn from the pasuk, when a man will open up a pit, okay, and we learn a man opening a pit below sharbor and not an ox opening a pit. If my ox makes a pit, I don't have to pay. So if the reason you don't pay full damage is because the guy's not obligated for a pit dug by his animal, and if this chicken got wrapped up in a stumbling block, it's the chicken's problem, not the guy's problem. He doesn't pay full damages. That also the same rule by staff damages. Each bar below shore bar. He only obligated when a man digs a pit and not an ox, and therefore you don't pay anything, not whole, not half. Elamas, so you have to say you have to go back. We're not talking about a stumbling block. What are we talking about? We're talking about where through it with it shot it through the string or whatever is connected to it, and it broke things. It's not talking about a stumbling block. It's talking about a damage done by throwing, by causing it to throwing it off. Be itmar, okay, and therefore what? And therefore the whole. How do we explain our mission? It's really the din of stones, okay, and the chicken owner is paying half damages, okay. Even if somebody else tied it, or it doesn't matter, because you can't obligate the tire, okay, because nobody, it's not a stumbling block. The guy who tied it on would be obligated for making a pit, but this is not a pit. It's not it's stones, okay, but it didn't damage as a pit, and therefore that guy's exempt. So who's obligated? The chicken owner for the chicken tossing up stones. And that's all. It's clear why you're paying half damages. I have a Rav Huna, and that whole statement of Rav Huna never was talking about our Mishnah. When he made his statement, when he said that the guy who tied it is obligated, he wasn't talking about a Mishnah, but Alma, he's really talking about what a case that's disconnected. We learn like this. Itmar, okay, Alma Itmar was taught completely disconnected to the Mishnah. Dolo hefker. Let's say there's no call it a string. There's a hefker, owner of the string. Amrav, when he says Niksha love, if the owner of the string got tied onto the chicken leg on its own and somebody tripped on it as a boar, Potter, okay, obviously it's exempt. Because there's nobody to make pay it because the chicken got an ownerless pit on it. Okay, kosher adam. But if a human being tied it on, let's say tied a string onto the chicken, and then somebody tripped on the chayev, then the tire owner is obligated by. Why is that? Even though he tied on, I didn't make this point clear. Even though he tied on a string that was ownerless, once he picked it up, it became his, and he is the owner. Really, other people argue because the bar didn't have to really own anyway. Okay, mishum my mechayev. The Gemara says 1 second. If a man tied it onto the chicken leg, why is he obligated for? He says, okay, what is he obligated for? Because usually a pit is a damager where you did it. If it didn't do the damage, okay, when the chicken is dragging it around to another place, why is he obligated? The boar that he dug moved to someplace else. So if you remember, we already learned earlier. We already learned. We already learned earlier that by making a double-sided derivation between ox and pit, we can learn what that a pit that you or a stumbling block that you put into the public domain that rolled due to the feet of men or animals. Okay, he's still obligated, even a boar that moved. Says the Mishnah the following. Okay, now we're done. Now we're up to what? Eating. Ketzad, we're the following up. We talked about eating. Ketzad. Shemud, if he said, how is eating considered to be forewarned and it pays full damages, even the first time? It's forewarned to eat things that are normal, but not to eat things that are not normal. Now, by saying that anything that's normal, the chiddush here is what? That not only here, so for example, not only food like, let's say, even though we spoke about in cattle, but the truth is that anything that's normal, you're obligated. So let's say you have a deer. If the deer eats, or you have a venison and it eats meat, you're also, because that's normal. Even though for cows to eat meat is abnormal, but for, let's say, venison, eating meat is normal. But cows, huh?
Venison, deer are not meat eaters.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it, actually. Okay, so other venison, other wild animals. No, forget about deer, not deer. Any wild animal, anything called non-domesticated. Yeah, we'll talk about it, actually. Good point. Okay, but it's the whole perisurakos. We said that cattle are forewarned. It's normal for them to eat fruits and produce. Fruits and produce and vegetables. But if a cow ate garment or kalim or utensil, you pay half damages. Why? Because that's not eating. That is what? That's goring. It's abnormal. Okay, but when do we say what that you have to pay full damages and the animals for eating normally? That's only the domain of the damagee. Part of what we said, like we learned so many times, because since it's not called another's field, like the pasuk says, in the field of another, eating in the public domain is exempt. But this is the chiddush that we haven't talked about yet at all. Even though eating is exempt in the public domain, he still has to pay his bills. It sounds like the animal gets benefit. Really, if the owner gets benefit, okay, from the animal eating, like he saved money by the animal eating, even though what, as far as the paying damages for eating in the public domain, he's not obligated. But if he benefited by not having to feed his animal, but the animal eating the public domain, we're going to see what that he does have to pay the amount that he saved. Okay, we're going to explain that afterwards. How much is that? We'll explain how you make the calculation. But you have to pay your bills. You got benefit, you pay for it. We're very meritocracy here in the Torah. You got benefit, you got a service, you pay for it.
The animal, the owner's animal, ate this stuff in the field.
No, in the public domain. And really, so as far as damages, he's not the full damages doesn't have to pay because eating and trampling is only in the private domain. But benefit, he got benefit. You still benefit from somebody else's produce. You got to pay the owner of the animal. So he's not going to pay damages. The owner of the produce that his animal ate.
Okay.
He's going to pay the owner. Now, Kate side, okay, okay. It's still not explaining the payment, but under what circumstances will it pay for what it benefited? If it ate out in the actual road of the public domain, it has to pay what benefit it got. Though, however, if it ate from the side of the road, which is what, okay, then it only pays what? It's a gorer at that point. It's not like the public domain. That's one way to read it. It's like a gorer, and what he's only going to pay what? Half damages, and if it's forewarned, it's going to pay full damages, like we'll see later. Okay, and there's two different ways to read it, but it doesn't get the rule of the public domain it doesn't get the rule of it gets the rule of from the side of the public domain. It gets the rule of goring and not the rule of eating. Right. The Pesach Echanos, okay, for example, here outside Pesach means outside at the entryway, outside the store. Okay, Mishalmes Mashanenes. It pays what it got benefit from, even in the public domain. But inside Mishalmes Mashanetika, we'll call it the private domain. It pays what it damaged. Okay, now Tana Rabbana, we learned that Hashem this Nachos Roilov. We're going to explain that case after. We said in the Mishnah that the animal's forewarned to eat as long as it eats things that are fitting. Ketzad, what's an example? If the animal went into the damage's field and ate things that fit, and it drank liquids that are fit for it, they're normal. It pays full damages. Also, what a non-domesticated animal, and it went into the damage's place, and it actually attacked an animal, killed it, and ate the meat. Okay, Mishal Nezek Shalom, you pay full damages. Why? Because it's eating what's normal. Okay, Parashach Lasorin. And also, let's say a cow eats barley, which is really not cow food; it's really donkey food. All the next things are things that animals eat if they're stuck, but it's not their normal feed. A cow eats barley, which it won't normally eat. It's really donkey food, but if it's stuck, it eats it. But kashina is a type of vegetable that usually cows eat and donkeys don't, but the donkey ate it. Okay, but kelev shalika is a shema. Dogs don't usually lick up but oil, but it did. It does when it's stuck. And a pig ate a piece of meat, even though it wasn't normal. Okay, but all these animals, when they're hungry, they eat. In these cases, even things that the animals eat in a pinch hit are still considered normal, and you pay full damages. Now that you told me what, that any food that's not normal, ate it, but it eats it in a pinch. Okay, it's still called eating. You told me any eating in a pinch is normal eating. You pay. Okay, so therefore I'm gonna now apply that rule. High shunra, if a cat ate dates, which only eats in a pinch hit. The chamra the achol benisa, and donkeys that eat fish, which is only the pinchit, Mishal Nezir only pay full damages. Now, a donkey ate bread. Policy the and while it was eating the bread, it also chewed up the basket that was holding the bread. Chayver Yehuda, so Yehuda said, "Listen, you have to pay l'shalim nezek shalom anama for the bread. You have to pay full damages. Why? Because that's eating. You pay full damages. But for eating the basket, okay, which is not normal, so that's goring, and you pay half damages." I Gemara says, "Amai." Wait a second. Why is he paying half damages? Came the orche the mechal nahama since it's normal to eat the bread, it's normal. It's also normal to chew up the basket. That's how you eat. That's a normal way of eating. Remember we said before, when there's seeds in remember there were seeds in the glass, it was normal for the chicken to eat the seeds and break the glass. You know, so what's the difference? It's the same thing. Okay, the answer is the Achavahade policy says, I'll tell you why. Because what happened here was the case was where it ate the bread and then it chewed up the basket. So they're really two separate things. One second. He says, is it really true? He says, is it really true that it's normal for the donkey to eat bread? Reminu, we have a contradiction. We learned in a brisa. It's a little strange that it did that. Let's say the animal ate bread and meat and cooked and a porridge. You pay half damages. Why? Because it's not normal to eat these things. My love, what's it talking about? Behema, isn't it talking about a cow, for example? And it's not normal for cows or behemoths to eat bread or to eat meat or to eat porridges. No, it's talking about what? Undomesticated animal. Undomesticated animals, okay, it's unnatural. They even on a pinch hit, they don't eat bread, okay? But a cow, it does indeed eat bread, like we said.
It's just wild animal. It's still an owner involved.
Yeah. But I can have a lion. I might have all kinds of animals. Yeah, all kinds of animals. Right? A dog. Okay. Chaya, basa, or what are you talking about? It says undomesticated animals. It is normal for them to eat. It is normal for them to eat meat. Okay. He says the answer is what? The midfay. No, it's roasted meat. They don't eat roasted meat. IV by same. Alternatively, Batavia. Or it's what? It's talking about what? Listen to this. Talking about a deer. That what? Even though it's an undomesticated animal, like you said before, deers don't eat meat. If I say but no, it's really what? The mehema ubasura. Sorry, it's really talking about a cow, like a domesticated animal, and the only thing it ate it right off the table. And even though what? Okay, even though it does eat bread, but it doesn't eat bread this way. That's abnormal. Okay, and therefore what? Since it's abnormal to eat off the table, therefore it pays half damages like goring. And we'll call that a daf. These are big pages of this.
But a goat,
They eat everything. Somebody just told me this. Oh, I just read, and I didn't understand it. I just read an article. This woman, she makes everything naturally from her farm. So she's preparing everything for the Gaisha holiday. So she says they also have these pine trees, and one of them is going to be her tree for the Gaisha holiday. But she doesn't waste anything. Then she's going to use it for goat feed. So I assume that goats eat sawdust. I don't know, or something.
No. That's the twigs and branches.
Twigs and branches, something. Yeah. Trim it.
Farm.
Yeah.
Near Down. There's a farm near Down. The Jewish couple, and they are naturalists.